Let us start and continue the Security and Defence Subcommittee meeting. In this part, afternoon, we will speak about Single European Sky, SESAR, and operational impact on CSDP missions and military capabilities. We will have an exchange of view with Mr. Maurizio Castelletti, Head of Unit for the Single European Sky, Directorate General for Mobility and Transport of the European Commission, who replaced Mr. Baldwin, who apologized for his absence. He is abroad. Mr. Luc Tigat, okay, Director for Single Sky at Eurocontrol. Mr. Carlo Borgini, Deputy Executive Director at the SESAR Joint Undertaking, and Mr. Gianpaolo Lillo, Director for Armaments at European Defence Agency. So there, as I see, there are a lot of people from Italy. You have majority in the room. Okay. The Single European Sky is something we already discussed at our subcommittee, and in October, as you probably know, the European Parliament adopted a report of the implementation of the Single European Sky, which included opinion by Security and Defence Subcommittee, drafted by our colleague Evgeny Kirillov from Bulgaria Socialist Group. It stressed the importance of civil-military cooperation and the need for a thorough analysis of the consequences for defence and for strengthening the role of the, for example, European Defence Agency to help this process. So, without any additional delay, I would like to ask you to give us your presentation, with one request to limit your first presentation to maximum 10 minutes. Then we will have some space for questions and answers. So you will have additional time to answer the questions. Mr. Castelletti, please start.
Okay, thank you very much. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, members of this subcommittee. So once again, apologies from the side of my director, who could not come, and thank you for inviting the Commission at this debate. So my intervention will mainly focus on the political, let's say, framework, and on the deployment of SESAR, so on the aspect of implementation, of concrete implementation of SESAR. Starting from the Single European Sky, SESAR is one element of the policy on the implementation of the Single European Sky. As you know, we call it the technological pillar. So it is a program, the project to modernize the ATM system. And if we look at the Single European Sky, there are three main reasons why we involve the military in the context of this policy. First of all, because we could have, in the context of a provision of air navigation services, some players which are military. I could make some example. For example, in Italy, meteorological services are provided by the military, or in some airports, the military themselves are providing services, air traffic services to the civil users. So the second reason is military are also users of the civil airspace. So they fly, they may decide to fly under the rules of the civil, so the so-called GAT, General Air Traffic Rules. Finally, there is a question of sharing a common resource, which is airspace. So the use of airspace, which is very important, it's an important question because there are different needs. So, of course, civil users fly for commercial reasons, but military users have to use the airspace for their specific reasons, so defence and security needs. Having said that, I have to say that CES, the Single European Sky, and SESAR are purely civil initiatives. So the title of this debate say the impact of SESAR, of CES, on the capabilities, on defence capability. Of course, these initiatives, which are meant to be civil initiatives, in principle, have no direct impact on military, so there should be no impact because they are initiatives which have been organised in the context of an air transport policy, not in the context of a defence policy. So, in principle, SESAR should not produce any direct impact on the capabilities of the military to conduct their operation for military purpose. We will see that there are some indirect impact because as I said before, militaries can provide services to the civil users, and also because militaries flies under civil rules and use a common resource, which is the airspace. And from this, the necessity to involve the military under the best way, to have a good coordination, a good participation of the military in all the bodies established in the context of SS policy. So this is one of the main, let's say, added value of this policy, so to try to involve as much as possible the military community in the debate about the single European sky. This happens in the single sky committee, in the industry consultation body. It happens also in the context of a SESAR joint undertaking, as indicated by Mr. Borghini in his presentation. And you will hear from Eurocontrol also, which is a civil military organisation. Now, looking at the SESAR now as the initiative to deploy, I would like to draw your attention to this regulation which has been adopted this year in May, so regulation number 409 of this year. As you know, SESAR has three distinct phases: a phase of definition, a phase of development, and a phase of deployment. The phase of definition led to the production of an ATM master plan. The phase of development is now in the end of a SESAR JU, of a SESAR joint undertaking, and the phase of deployment should start next year. If we read this regulation, you will understand that it has been written with a special attention to the role of the military. There is, first of all, a recital, which is recital 19, which indicates that SESAR should be coordinated with the military side, and SESAR should have no adverse impact on defence capabilities. And what do we mean by this? We mean that we have to minimize this impact because SESAR may set requirements for civil use which may impact on the military, so it may have some financial implication for the military. Also, the definition of operational stakeholders includes the military side, so it is in Article 2.10, so we say civil and military users, civil and military service providers. The regulation then it is divided in some sections. One is about the definition of what we have to deploy, and we call it the common project. So what we have to deploy, who should deploy, when, and by when and where to deploy. And in this process of definition of a content, of a technical content, of a new operational concept to be applied, we indicate that the military should be fully associated. So. And there is a specific reference to the European Defence Agency. This agency has been identified as the leading, I would say, counterpart of the Commission to get the views of the military on this. Then the governance is established at three levels. And we have a policy level, we have a management level, and an implementation level. The policy level is led by the Commission, and once again, the Commission shall promote the participation of military stakeholders as far as possible. And in this article concerning the policy level, there is once again, a specific reference to the European Defence Agency. The European Defence Agency shall facilitate the coordination of military views from and in support of the Member States and the relevant international military organisation, meaning NATO, on SESAR deployment and inform military planning mechanism of the requirements stemming from SESAR deployment. So as you see, there is a mechanism through the European Defence Agency to allow the contribution of a military side to SESAR. Of course, this requires a good coordination between the agency and the member states, so we expect member states to give the necessary input to the agency to discharge this duty. In terms of challenges, to conclude my intervention, I think there are still some part of this regulation which should be discussed with the military side. First of all is the involvement of the military side at the two levels, the management level and the implementation level. At the management level, we will have a deployment manager. It has not yet been decided who will run this entity, but there are indications in these regulations that whoever will be, he should set up the appropriate cooperative arrangement with the military. So there is also this requirement that the coordinator of the deployment process should coordinate with the military. A first challenge is about how the military will play a role at the level of the deployment manager, so at the level of coordinating the deployment activities. A second challenge is relating to the definition of, I would say, of standards and regulation to be applied in this phase of deployment. And in this case, there is a specific reference to the need to consider the applicability of a military standard. So we have to consider always the possibility to make use of what we have already in place and to see if it is possible to establish a sort of equivalence between the military standards and the civil standards, so to see if the two systems, civil and military system, can interact without minimizing the changes, of course, while ensuring interoperability. So this will be an essential element. And finally, of course, the next step which we are on which we are working on is the validation process of the element to be deployment. So there is now a document which is in preparation on the side of the Commission to identify what are the technologies to be deployed starting from the next year. So these technologies, there is already a list, a tentative list of technologies. Some of these technologies may have an impact on the military, so it will be essential for us to understand in a clear manner how these technologies may impact on the military community, the size of this impact also in monetary terms, so the financial implication, and how the military community may be associated to support the deployment of these technologies. So in a process we should be synchronized, so this is why the participation of all stakeholders is important. And I repeat, making the best use of what we have today in existence, because finally the industry producing system is the same industry. I stop here, so I think I was in the 10 minutes, and of course I will be prepared to reply to any question from the floor. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon to all of you. It's really a pleasure here for Eurocontrol to participate to this hearing, and I would like, during the 10 minutes which have been earmarked, to develop, what we have acquired since the 60s experience in the civil military domain. Trying to organize cooperation or coordination between the civil and military airspace users is not new. Eurocontrol was created in the 60s to establish a platform between the two communities and to see how possibly the management of the airspace could be done from a European dimension. And that is why we have been created. This means that we have, in fact, in Europe, a civil military organization where you have both aspects present and where we can discuss and we can offer to have an open discussion, and we try to reconcile the requirements of the two communities, the two users, in a single approach. But the emergence of the EU competence in ATM has introduced, of course, through the SES initiative, as mentioned by Mr. Castelletti, has introduced the concept of the creation of a binding regulatory framework, which was seen as necessary to accelerate this discussion, this dialogue between the two communities. And this is today something we have to understand being a challenge for the military community, but also for the civil and military coordination. Why is that? I think every time the EU is adopting regulations in ATM, there is a need to see how those will have could impact the military operations and how they could continue to operate in their national airspace or even in the European airspace, still being compliant with the EU rules. And sometimes, I mean, EU rules are also mandatory for the military users. There are some legal tools which have been established and added to facilitate this coordination, and they are described, as also mentioned, interoperability implementing rules in all the guidance material which has been developed, but also through the concept of flexible use of airspace. This is something not invented by Europe, it's designed at global level. It's not something we have done in isolation, but the difference here is that it is mandatory. And there, I mean, there is a need to ensure that when implemented by the member states, it's properly reflected on how the airspace is organized. Another tool established where, I mean, we have directly a role to play as Eurocontrol is the network management function. And this network management function is also has been designed by the EU to provide solutions to both military and civil airspace users when, I mean, of course, we speak about general air traffic regarding the military community. And this tool must be seen also as a sort of good prototype of how, I mean, we could have at European level, continental level, a single solution to coordinate almost, I would say, real-time the management of the airspace. Another element from the SES2 where, I mean, we see through the implementation of the legal provisions, the functional airspace blocks, the regional cooperation between states. They are offered there the possibility, because of the legal order established by you, how they could organize themselves at regional level, not only at national level, because it's where very quickly you will see the limits of this exercise if you don't facilitate cross-border cooperation, including at FAB level. Something which is now put forward and very much a challenge, but probably an opportunity, is the concept of mission trajectory. It has been introduced to reinforce the coordination, really in operational terms, but also to accommodate the national defense and security requirements in the design of the single space in Europe. And this concept of mission trajectory, it's really something designed for the military airspace users, is based on the advanced flexibility of airspace. So more and more we would like to promote real-time sharing of information on the states of the airspace. So if you have training areas closed, if they are open because the exercise is finished, that should be put forward as information and shared between the different users, not only the military, of course, which will have to leave the training area, but also to the airlines who might decide at that time to proceed. So see, this advanced flexibility of airspace is something we really believe should be implemented quickly. There is also something we are doing now, especially at Eurocontrol, is to draft harmonized air traffic control rules for the military aircraft. National regulations exist for the military airspace users, but I mean there is a call for having European military air traffic control procedures, and it's what we delivered, and we share with our member states. Just to remind, Eurocontrol is composed of 40 member states, so this is immediately applicable not mandatory, of course, but on voluntary basis to the member states of Eurocontrol. Another vehicle we see as bringing a lot of added value is the setting up of technical architecture, which should be capable to organize the sharing of information between radars about the need maybe to close airspace for refueling exercise or refueling needs. You have the unmanned aircraft systems, where there is a need also to exchange information, and this is very important that this exchange of information can be done between civil and military community. A wider real-time distribution of ATM data is seen as a source of benefits, and when it's related to aeronautical information and surveillance information between the ground and the aircraft. This where, again, by having an appropriate collaboration between the two development programs, on one side military and civil side, we could bring benefits to the military communities. This is another benefits Single Sky can bring on the table. And to contribute to that, Eurocontrol has decided to launch a program which is based on the concept of a centralized services, where we would like to create databases which is accessible to all stakeholders when there is a need to know exactly what's going on in the airspace regarding training areas, when they are open, when they will be closed, and so on. Also very important, the reuse of military capabilities. It's to reach the required level of communication, navigation, and surveillance performance. This is where we see also benefits for the two communities to discuss on their own capabilities and their own assets, not at only local level, but at regional level, FAB level, or network level. This is a source of economy, we think. What we recommend strongly with the European Commission, with EDAs, is to, and the joint undertaking, is to have a joint approach on standardization and certification. Joint means to be endorsed and agreed and shared between civil and military. This approach, as promoted by the EU, must be less prescriptive, and that will bring benefit to the military airspace users, and should be more focused on the way the users can demonstrate they comply with the performance requirements. So is the Single Sky or SESAR a risk or an opportunity for the military? This is a question which we should tackle properly if we don't want to lose the users in our program. And we see the need to, again, to ensure that airspace users, in this case the military, will need to continue to operate on a freely basis the same missions they were doing, and not constrained by rules which are imposed on airlines, which could have a side effect on the military airspace users. The concept of a civil-military performance partnership, where the military would benefit from establishing KPI, key performance indicators, on less emission in terms of CO2, but also, of course, linked to that, less fuel burnt. It's linked. Having direct routing, going from the airfield to directly to training area. They are all KPI, key performance indicators, we can certainly develop together between the civil and military. It's what Eurocontrol is trying to do through the mandate which it has received for the performance review body. So there are good news for the military. It's not only a constraint, but there are elements which could even reduce the cost of the missions and the efficiency of the flight. There are also opportunities with the Single Sky is to organize cross-border training missions through the regional cooperation. So we see also the benefit, as I said earlier. And as I said, also the reuse of existing infrastructure can bring benefit to the military community if they accept to make use of radar informations, or the other aspect in some member states of the EU, sometimes the civil air navigation service providers who is providing service to the military airspace users for interceptions, for example, for the fighters' missions. So there are elements which can be seen as constraints, but if they are well implemented, they can bring benefits to all. So that's, I think, what I wanted to say in terms of introduction or input to this thing.
Thank you very much. Sorry. Thank you very much. The next speaker is Mr. Carlo Borgini. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone, and dear honourable members of the Parliament and ladies and gentlemen. We have heard from Maurizio Castelletti the policy approach to the cooperation between the military and civil user of the airspace. We heard about deployment. We heard about implementation from the Eurocontrol perspective with Luc. I would like to present the SESAR perspective and where we are today. I would like to provide you with the research and innovation side of the work performed in SESAR, and how the defence and security perspective and the state's aviation in a whole are a substantial paradigm in order to ensure the achievement of the European Master Plan performance targets. The SESAR programme is based and realised through a partnership that is legally recognised as a SESAR joint undertaking. Since its beginning, we have ensured all stakeholders contributing in the setup, running and validation of the research and innovation results. This concerns also the military community at large. Initially, the involvement of the military community in the programme was performed through a contribution of Eurocontrol, that is one of our founding members, together with the European Union. But step by step, the military family expanded with a military expertise contribution directly from the member states. We have today 98 military experts from 10 European member states contributing to the SESAR projects. And since April 2011, we established a working arrangement with the European Defence Agency. The European Defence Agency is acting as a focal point, ensuring a larger contribution by states and military organisations in order to achieve the participation of military authorities in all the relevant aspects of the programme. And this is going beyond the European Union aspects. Consider also aspects paving the way to the involvement of NATO and other military key partners. Where we are in the programme today? We are in the preparation of what we call the Release 4, meaning that we are already on the way to deliver the SESAR programme results. In particular, what concerns step 1 and 2, that in our language means to move to time-based operation in air traffic management, and later on, as already Luc mentioned, to trajectory-based operation. Is a way to make air traffic management more efficient, more predictable, environmental friendly, and ensuring much more capacity available. This work is conducted by the SESAR partnership, and the military community is part of the process at different stages, from its conceptualisation up to the validation of the results. Not all what is developed in SESAR will need to be deployed by the states and military aviation. This is clear. We are convinced that the airspace is a resource for all the users, being them civil or military. We are doing our best to ensure and to improve the coexistence and interoperability among the military operation and the civil aircraft. It is clear that the success of SESAR, not only research and innovation or research and development, but also and in particular deployment, will result from maintaining the efforts toward a large civil-military integration and to identify innovative and supportive solutions in the military implementation of SESAR to streamline their business case. Mr. Titgat already mentioned the main concept underpinning the work in SESAR. It can be summarised in military mission trajectory. We are talking about advanced flexible use of airspace. Today we are using with not flexible use of airspace, but the trajectory of the military aircraft are becoming much more longer, much wider, and it will not be any more possible to manage it in fixed airspace. To eliminate as far as possible the rigidities we have still today, the harmonisation of the air traffic control rules, as Maurizio was mentioning before, there are still countries in which have different types of rules in place, and also architectural aspects. It is clear that we need to see what is already available and to leverage on the aircraft capabilities that we have today in the military fleets. Key will be the capacity to exchange information and higher level of automation, which will bring important progress on how air traffic management is currently achieved, allowing for human resources to concentrate on higher added value operations. But we are not yet there. The work is still ongoing. The commitment of the military community at large to SESAR and SESAR to the military community are paramount. As Eurocontrol is a founding member and Mr. Tidgat said, we strongly believe that SESAR is an opportunity for the military to operate now and in the future in the most effective, efficient and economic manner. But there is one of the key aspects which is brought up in many cases by the military community that need to have a certain attention: the cost of deployment of SESAR. The recent Commission regulation on deployment provides for the SESAR joint undertaking the role of bridging de facto research and innovation with deployment. The SESAR joint undertaking performs the activity from exploratory research up to pre-industrialization. We are not in charge of deployment. We are only in charge of bridging towards deployment. And what does it mean? It means to package the research and innovation results in proposal, fully complemented by the business cases, underpinning the cost and benefit analysis, and the possible needs of financing to ensure that components of the system which need to be deployed but do not bring as such a benefit are not postponed. If you look at the Master Plan 2012, of which the SGU partnership is in charge, the cost-benefit analysis for the military community is still not complete. The joint undertaking, together with the European Defence Agency, perform work on the establishment of the overall business case concerning the military community. We have preliminary information at this stage, but we don't have a full picture, and this has to come from the military community itself. We know there are many issues related to this and different types of aspects, but this is something that is to be complete. As a matter of fact, the business case of the military community cannot be looked in isolation. Yes, at the end the national budgets will have to intervene to ensure if, where and when needed, the upgrade of certain parts of the military capabilities, but which would be the risk at national level or European level or pan-European level if you consider the Eurocontrol role, if some SESAR components bringing benefit to all the budget would be kept on hold due to the one single airspace user situation. So in validating the business case, we should not only look at the specific investment cost of one key airspace user like the military community, but also the overall economic impact of the deployment of SESAR at regional level, at national level, at FAB level, or pan-European level. Behind all this, today, in the SESAR programme, there are projects fully dedicated to the civil-military interoperability. Ad hoc studies complementing the programme activities, including the context of global interoperability, to support military decision makers, especially the air chiefs, to make their procurement decision. Two representatives of the military community sit in our board. One is Gianpaolo on behalf of the Chief Executive of the European Defence Agency, and the other is a representative appointed by the military ATM board. The involvement on NATO is at different level, and any other significant military actors is guaranteed through the European Defence Agency, which has to voice their concerns in the context of this working arrangement between the European Defence Agency and the joint undertaking. To conclude, there is a strong commitment of SESAR to states and military aviation concerns. We have also done work concerning the integration, for example, of unmanned aircraft system, also called as ARPAS, or the name that you prefer, to ensure their integration in the new ATM environment. And tangible and validated results provide a concrete framework for the military decision maker on the evolution of SESAR. We will continue our work together with the military community to ensure that SESAR is well understood in its aspects, and will be strongly willing to continue the work to ensure the achievement of the European ATM Master Plan with the military stakeholders on board. Thank you.
Oh, okay, one more time using microphone. And the last speaker will be, at the moment, Mr. Gianpaolo Lillo. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me say that it is a pleasure for me to be here. I would like to thank you for this opportunity, for giving EDA the opportunity to present what we are doing for the military committee to participate and to support our military voice requirement in the development of the program SESAR. Before going in this detail, I would like to expand a little bit more on the operational impact on DSB mission military capability. This subject has been touched in the opening by Mr. Castelletti, but I would like to add some more precision on that, because I think it's a key important to know how and why the military are so affected. So to do that, to answer to this question, this simple in this formulation, as normally happens in this simple question, they require complex exam to be answered. So that is what we did with a specific study. And to do that, we started by grouping all the kind of mission, military mission, that could be performed, could be done by the military. And this has been grouped in 5 main groups, which have some relevance with the consequence of SESAR implementation. The first group is the military mission with traffic priority, like search and rescue, or even scramble mission, that are normally performed under what is called operational air traffic. This, as has been mentioned, is a set of rules that allows military to have priority in their operation. These rules are nationally established, and the possibility to access to this rule is completely taken into consideration by the SESAR concept of operation. That means that this possibility is safeguarded. Of course, as Mr. Tutgard has said, there is also some need for harmonization of this rule, which remains under the national responsibility. The second military mission, the second group of military mission is the mission that will require segregate airspace, like air-to-air refueling, training, and fine range activities. Being conducted in segregate airspace, in principle, this mission should not be affected. This is an important thing to understand by the implementation of SESAR functionalities. But to assess these areas, the restricted area, military needs to be inserted to use the air traffic functionality. And since they are dealing with training, it's very important to understand that being reduced in possibility to train efficiently, that can have a strong impact on the operational capabilities. The third group of mission is the military mission not requiring segregated airspace, as, for example, main air transport mission, which are normally conducted under general air traffic rules, which are the most effective. This is very important. And I think there is a special attention to this mission, because it's the way the military use all the services that are going to be improved thanks to this new functionality. Finally, we have two more groups, which are low altitude fly, which in principle will not be affected, and other activities requiring high space, like artillery firing or RPS flight. These require some local connection in order to have the possibility to use a functionality, but are less effective. So I just wanted to review in deep all these possibilities, because I think that having clear the possibility, the reason why the participation, involvement of the military in this activity is so important. I would also add that all these aspects affect also all the military operators, starting from the military airspace users, as been mentioned many times, the military air service provider, because military are also providing services like the meteor service, some ITM, military ITMs, military airport operators, as well as military regulators. Because of this, I would say that thanks to the availability and also the capacity to have a long-term vision of our colleagues, a lot of progress has been achieved in the last term. It was not like that in the beginning. A few years ago, we have a clear disconnection, no bridge, I would say, between the European Commission and the defence community. On one side, we have the Ministry of Defence. We have to remember that the Ministry of Defence are currently owning the largest fleet in Europe. They are operating more than 2,000 fighters, 800 transport aircraft, 2,600 helicopters. It is a huge fleet. Even if they also only occupy 2% of the traffic, but in any case, it's a huge number of aircraft. And they have also, as I said, particular requirement is access to the sky, and they are also the expression of national interest and sovereignty. On the other side, we had the Commission, we were developing a policy impacting significantly the military. Where are we today? As I said, a lot of improvement have achieved. From the Commission side has been clearly demonstrated. We have much better understanding of military specificities, and we have a form of strategization between us and them. They have a strong wish, as has been expressed many times today, to have the military on board, and actually we have been invited to be present in all the fora and the consortia, in all the possible forms. There is immediately a better understanding about the military specificity, especially in the preparation of deployment, when shaping the government structure for deployment, and find its way to support the military also financially. This has been mentioned clearly. This is a key point for us. Carlo has clearly explained this concept. From the military side, which is also important because also from the military community, this risk and opportunity were not so clear in the beginning. So the effect of our involvement has also produced a better understanding of SESAR challenges and opportunities. That's been mentioned clearly by Luke. There are opportunities because we can have the possibility to have optimized flight, less fuel, be faster on the spot, and to profit of a less fragmented sky. Not forgetting the flexible use of airspace. We are better connected to SESAR, and we have the possibility to inject inputs at early stage. Indeed, all doors are open. And we are associated at the political level, it has been said, in the elaboration of the common project starting with the pilot common project. Thanks to SESAR, we have been associated in the elaboration of the proposal that is currently under the evaluation by the Commission. And we have also put together a good way to involve all the military components. A good example is the SMIF, the SESAR Military Forum, which is a unique example in Europe of gathering together all the possible involved actors. And we have liaison with the SESAR-EU, as we said, cooperation, and also with Eurocontrol. There are some challenges ahead of us. The implementation of the Commission implementing regulation that has been presented, and the establishment of the governments. This is very important. It will be challenging for us. And the new implementation and the new regulation is going to be issued, the regulation that will set up the rule for the deployment manager selection. And in order to fulfill this role, what we have done is to convince our member state to launch a category A project in EDA. This is quite a unique initiative. You know, the category A project in EDA is a project that, in principle, all member states are participating, and they are supporting us in providing us with 4 additional resources that will be used for playing this role. These experts that are going to join us on the 1st of January will translate the requirements coming from STEM deployment, from SESAR deployment, into programs and technology. They will facilitate cooperation in this regard. They will pull demand in order to decrease the cost. They facilitate the access to European fund. This is a key point. Again, Carlo has explained how important it is. Even if the financial implication for the military is not defined clearly in a definite way, we have a rough estimation, very rough, which is based on a lot of assumptions, is not precise. I have also some difficulty in presenting you, but please consider just as a rough order of magnitude. We are speaking about the order of magnitude of 4 billion euro as impact for military, so it's a huge amount of money. And that needs to be supported. And of course, we have to facilitate the coordination of the line and the program, facilitating the coordination with NATO. This is very important. It is a role which we also are playing. We have to make sure that we have staff-to-staff coordination and we share information. That's what we are doing. And, well, notably, with regard to NATO, we have to make sure that we have to consider that we have spent quite a lot of money to develop SES system in NATO, and we cannot accept that we waste this money and we not having a compatibility with this system. So this is why we are going to intensify this relationship in deployment phase. Last words, SESAR at the European Council. We need to raise this issue at the level of the European Council because I think that it deserves some attention. And the main message is make sure the defence community and its specificities are well taken into account in the single European sky and not only in the technology pillar. So with this, I would conclude my intervention. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. We have some more members, so I expect to have some more questions to you. As we now in Europe discuss, we all discuss the issue of money, and of course officially also we as Parliament, we are also partly responsible for the European Union budget, and we have co-decision rights. So I would like to ask for the money. We were informed that the estimations, the original estimations, are that on military side is like 4 billion euro more or less of total cost of 30 of the whole process. Is it true now, or are there is it any chance to go down with the cost, and how, if yes? So that's my question. Mr. Galler, the EPP coordinator.
Ja, vielen Dank.
Yes, thank you very much. Attention, I'm going to be speaking in German.
Ich möchte genau da an.
Yes, I can pick up on that point, and I think that because it is the decisive point, obviously. English in 2, Italian in 4. Va bene? Can you hear me?
Das ist ja der.
As I was saying, that is the decisive point. We've just heard the figure from Mr. Lisek, the 4 billion, and obviously we need to know just to what extent the national level they're going to be going along with this, and to what extent has investment been made in these capabilities under the national budgets. Do you have any kind of overview? If you're saying that progress is being made, everything has been clarified, and obviously if the necessary political will is there, that has to be backed up by the money, the financial resources. So how far have we got? Can you give us figures and names of countries? In principle, I feel that the single European space, if there were the necessary political will, of course, it could already exist. It could have existed for decades because we've always had the technical opportunities and possibilities for this. And it is regrettable that there are certain member states, different member states, who are not willing to recognise the advantages of all of this and are not willing to support it, and seem to be throwing it overboard because of their own national aspects. Obviously, the military dimension to this is an additional aspect. It does form part of the whole concept of airspace, because if we're looking at this whole process, we wouldn't be able to have the kind of benefits if we kept all of this separate. So I'd just like to know to what extent we've managed to implement something that the EPP had wanted, i.e. to use EU resources in order to have these kind of deployments. We know there's a military aspect, but it's linked up to a civilian aspect, i.e. to have optimal use of the single European sky, our shared airspace. And to what extent is the Commission planning unmanned missions, RPAS? To what extent are they going to be incorporated into SESAR? I think maybe 1 or 2 member states have already given their view on that. Thank you very much, Mr. Gahler.
Socialist group.
I don't need to be persuaded of the importance of the single European sky. I came to the conclusion that it was an absolute necessity when we, in this Parliament, undertook the investigation on the CIA flights back in 2006 and 2007. When I went to talk to the Portuguese agencies involved in the control of traffic of the airspace, and I realized it was a mess. It was a mess in Portugal, and it was a mess in the other countries. And it was indeed, I mean, anyone, I mean, if I was a criminal, you know, involved in drug trafficking or, you know, arms trafficking or, you know, from somewhere in Latin America or anywhere, you just get yourself the money to hire an American plane, an American registered plane, civilian or military, but mainly civilian, and you can come into Europe and land, you know, and nobody asks questions, really. So I realized the insecurity in which we live. And at the same time, I realized that there were, even at the national level, some people performing very well, both civilian and military, and some people not performing at all. I realized that, for instance, our traffic controllers agency, who directly link with Eurocontrol, and who have actually civilian operators and as well military operators, are very good and efficient and keep track of everything. But, for instance, our institute, which is supposed to certify, to give authorization for civilian planes to land, and to certify, for instance, aerodromes or airports, it's ridiculous. And if this happens in one country, which is part of the European realm, it happens in others, and we're definitely not the worst. I don't think the situation has improved in the meantime. So I absolutely see the merit, the importance of this single European sky. But, and I'm glad that here the panel we can see indeed how that articulation, civilian and military, is operating. But I see as well the resistance this is already entailing at the national level. That's why the Council is not that keen. So I would like to ask the panelists if what efforts, and namely by the Commission in particular, is being done to actually address the concerns of the existing institutions at the national level who are presently in charge, so that they themselves will indeed also integrate and articulate better, and then indeed will not offer the kind of resistance that I see they already offering. And that also involves a sharing of the money, because there's a lot of money involved.
Thank you very much. If there are no other questions, I would like to ask you, gentlemen, to answer for these questions of three of us. Of course, there is no need that all of you will answer all of the questions, so you can feel free to choose if you feel it's to you, to your institution. So maybe let's try from different side of the table. Mr. Lillo.
Thank you very much indeed. I will start from the economic side. I think it is quite an important subject. As I said in the beginning, it's easy to ask easy question, and the easy question is how much does it cost? But normally it's very difficult to provide answer to this easy question. This is what we try to do, because we have to take into consideration when then to answer this question, we have to take into consideration 27 member states air forces with different plan, with different airplanes, different idea about the implementation, the functionality they want. So it's extremely difficult to have a concrete, a precise calculation. And it's also difficult to gain some time information on that. What we did is to run a case on the basis of some assumption. As I said, very broad assumption that can be challenged during the development phase. And this broad assumption has been made on a limited number of member states, the one who are owning the largest fleet, and we made also some extrapolation to the entire fleet in Europe. This has produced the results that I was presented, the rough order of magnitude of 4 billion euro. Now, the way member states have to put money on that is important. I think that my colleague could explain better than me how this single European sky mechanism is expected to work. It is a business-oriented, it's a business view-oriented. As long as understood, this is the implementation of this functionality are driven by the possibility of the stakeholder we are doing investment to receive some recoupment of this investment. So in a few words, it is based on a positive business case. In the case of the military, this cannot be positive because there is no money that can be raised offering military services. That means that that's the reality. That means that this level of investment needs to be done by the government. And this money is to be found in the national budget, which are really in a very poor state now. So this is why the implementation is so important, because working on the implementation, these things can be graduated, and it's also important the way we can make the best use of the incentives that can be offered by the Commission to support this, allow me to say, negative business case for the military. And this is why our involvement is so important, not only in this definition phase, but also in supporting the way our member states will put together to assess this possibility. They will pool, hopefully, their needs in order to put together projects and use all the possible means to improve, to participate to this program. So I will leave the floor to our colleagues who want to add something on that point.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Borgini.
Thank you very much. On the financial aspects, it was mentioned also today during the informal council of Ministry of Transport that took place on Monday. The inefficiencies and of the current air traffic management system cost European citizens every single year 4 billion euros. So I didn't say it, but what I'm saying is that there is the scope. As I said in my presentation, if you look at the investment of the military community in isolation, yes, you can question where we find the money. If you put in a broad situation of the economic impact of the inefficiency on the European economy, you have the answer, in my opinion. Between these and put it in place, it will take a lot of time, because you need to arrive to a business case. I think airspace users, civil especially, have experience of a lot of cases in which have been mandated to deploy new technologies that are not yet used. And now they want to be sure that if they deploy something, there is a direct benefit that is coming to them. Finally, is coming to the citizen, because the 4 billion euros are paid by the citizen through tickets and so on and so on and so on. I wanted to answer mostly the question about how we ensure the integration of ARPAs or UAVs in the air traffic management system. The first point we have done is that we have launched a call for proposals. So we have 9 projects that will be starting now. So we have almost the contracts all signed. The kick-off meeting will be starting in October, into which we exactly test different types of scenarios for the integration of ARPAs within the current air traffic management system and in the future concept of operations. This is only the first step of it. In what we call the SESAR program 2020, that is under design, we have also integrated a more conceptual phase on how to integrate ARPAs in the air traffic management system in the future, and which are the steps that we need to undertake to be sure that it will happen. We consider ARPAs as any other type of airspace user or vehicle that can fly in the air traffic management system. I would say that on the question of sharing the money and the institutional level commitment of the member states, once again, our approach is to say, if we can demonstrate to the user at different level that there is a benefit in implementing and deploying SESAR, and this will result in a reduction of the overall cost of the system, we believe that this is the way and is paving the way to achieve it. Only regulation will never be sufficient. We'll have always situations that will be postponed, something like this. So it will be, first of all, to demonstrate there are benefits, and after to put the correct regulation together to achieve it, and ensure technology. On the cost point of view, I would like to make a basic example, but it's sometimes significant of what is going on. When initially SESAR was designed, and I think it's going back to 2005 to 2006, we started to talk about it, the first estimation were considering the need of changing hardware on board of the civil aircraft, because we are not being capable to deal with the type of information automation we are requiring today. If you go back today to some airframer, without mentioning name, and you ask them on the most advanced airplane what they need, they don't need to change any more hardware. They need only to change software. The cost is completely different. The time needed to keep on the ground the fleet is reduced enormously. It's true that for the military fleets, it's a completely different story because the life of an aircraft is much longer, but it's also true that there is no need to deploy everywhere the technology of SESAR. So this is the reason why the calculation that Mr. Lillo was mentioned on the 4 billion euros is something that needs further refinement, because it's really something that is developing in the time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I will start with the economical question, the cost. Okay, as Eurocontrol, we don't have the magic reply to the cost of the upgrade to the SESAR standards. But what I would like to say is that we know, it has been mentioned by my colleagues, that today, because of the fragmentation, there is really an inefficiency use of the airspace. Every year, airspace users are paying 14 billion euros in the ATM system, and investments every year is 1 billion euros. So you see there there is something wrong there. It means that the infrastructure deployed today is too expensive vis-à-vis what it is providing to the airspace users. So that is something you need to know. Second element is that I mentioned the sharing of infrastructure. There are a lot of infrastructure deployed by each member state, each air force, and today, I mean, there is, through the standard, interoperability standard, the possibility to share information, to share radar data. Of course, that requires a political decision, is to accept to pass to the neighbor informations which are made available through radars, and the same on sharing navigation systems. So I think this is all possible to upgrade and to get a single sky if there is a political willingness to do so. So it's not necessarily required to buy high-tech equipment. Today we can start with interconnecting the national network and to possibly not replacing them when they don't need to be replaced if access to data can be done across the border, just at regional level, not necessary to do that at continental level, but at FAB level. So an issue also, especially for the military question, I think we have been working a lot with EDA and SESAR-GU on an assessment and analysis on the existing onboard equipment on a military aircraft to see, but what do we really need to change on the onboard equipment, on the avionics. And the study demonstrated properly that I think there is not too much as such if we look at the systems on board and we have the systems adapted through software. So I mean, this is also something pragmatic to be aware that, I mean, compatibility of existing avionics for old aircraft which do not need to be modernized because they might be decommissioned within 5 to 10 years is something also to be put on the table. If we speak about money, that was your question. Also, by working together and having a single system, we will reduce the fuel consumption. And fuel is extremely expensive for everybody, not only the airlines, but also for the military. This is a source of economy. Before speaking about spending money, I think it's really a good idea to look at how we can save money. When I mean today we spend money where it might be not appropriate to do that. So on the RPS, the US system, already also mentioned by Carlo, but I want to mention to you that there are already 14 Eurocontrol member states who have decided to adopt national legislation to facilitate this insertion. This is probably a big mistake because 14 different standards, 14 different rules, when I mean there is a need for EU to adopt a single set of rules very quickly and in order to allow this insertion. So this is something which also must be known. On the question of certification of ATM equipment and the pooling together the national expertise, this is also something we observe, that each state has to develop supervisory authorities with highly sophisticated administrations capable to oversight their service providers by pooling together those authorities. It will also lead to savings of money, but also a more efficient approach and helping the convergence of the network. So that is to be the replies I would have put on the table.
Thank you very much. And last but not least, Mr. Castelletti, please.
Thank you very much. You have to understand that SES, the Single European Sky Policy, is a performance-driven initiative. So what does it mean? That all what we do in this policy is to increase the performance of the system, so to increase the capacity of the system, meaning that we have to reduce delays, to increase the cost efficiency, to increase the flight efficiency, and to increase, of course, safety. So in principle, we should be able to demonstrate that the benefits coming from these increases of capacity, flight efficiency, safety, and less environmental impact will offset the cost we are facing, which are costs linked to the new technology, so implementation of new technology, and the cost for operating this technology. So we have to do this demonstration when we start the implementation phase. SESAR is part of SES, and this performance-driven approach also applies to SESAR. So to do this, we have to be very careful in evaluating not only the cost, the benefit, but also the cost. So this is a first, so because if we are not able to quantify in a sound way benefit and cost, we end up in a cost-benefit analysis which is producing results which are not valid. When we try to put a cost to the ATM master plan, which is a roadmap for the implementation of new technologies, at the end of the process we discovered that there were no sufficient elements to quantify the impact on the military side. So, and this is why this was left open, and an exercise was launched in conjunction with the European Defence Agency to identify clearly how these technologies may impact on the military, on which type of operation. So there was a clear indication of the operation to be done by military, on which part of the fleet. So in a way that will allow to quantify in a clear way which are the costs, what is the financial impact on the military. So and the first estimate of this, I understand, it's in the amount of 4 billion euros. Now, but this is relating to the whole master plan. What we are doing now is to try to select a subset of technologies to be implemented in the time frame between next year and 2020. And for this, I would say there is a specific cost-benefit analysis to be done. So in this case, the amount foreseen, the global amount foreseen of cost is around 2.5 billion euro for all stakeholders, a value which has been discounted on the basis of a 2012 prices. So you have to take into account that the first phase will be a smaller phase. And in this light, we are in contact with the European Defence Agency to understand how much or out of these 2.5 should be apportioned to the military side. So when we have a clear visibility on this, we can then see how we can meet this cost. And we are studying different possibilities. We have, as you know, starting from the next year, we have a budget which will be available from the Connecting Europe facility, so from the successor to the TEN-T. We more or less, I think, we will have 3 billion of euros from the European Union side. This money, of course, may be used in particular to cover the negative cost-benefit analysis. So, because it's not only the case of military, there are also some users which are in the same situation. For example, business aviation may face a similar situation to have some negative cost-benefit analysis. So the intention would be, let's use the financial incentives to reduce, to mitigate the negative impact on some specific users. On the question of ARPAs, I would like to say that we are in the process of preparing a communication, so it should be published in the next weeks. This communication will indicate how the European Commission intend to approach the implementation of this system. So it will be an indication of the need to act on, if I can simplify, at 2 different levels. So one level which is a regulatory level, so the definition of specific rules and standards to allow the insertion of this type of aircraft, because as you can understand, when you insert these in a mixed environment, you have to be sure that this is done in a safe manner, and to do it in a safe manner, you need specific certification processes and specific rules to apply. A second aspect is the development of technologies, and for this the research will have to intervene. And as SJU is well placed, I think there are already discussions with SJU to foresee a program starting from next year on this. In this context, I think the experience of military, I would say, should be fully taken into account, because this type of drones has been mainly developed for military purpose. So the vehicle, I would say, puts a similar, let's say, requirements as on the civil side. We are now speaking of aircraft which are used for civil purposes, so with a different payload. So I think we have to build upon this experience of military and to see if we can make use of standards, of procedures, of requirements which have been successfully developed and implemented on the military side. So you see that there is a possibility of making the best use of what it has been done on the military side. And I stop here. Thank you.
Grazie. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you for all the information about this project, which we know will modernize and restructure European airspace. You have to be sure that we will follow the process, and we will probably ask you in the future, your institutions and you, to give us more information about